There is a war happening right now, beneath your feet, silent and invisible. Trees are poisoning each other. Vines are strangling competitors. Roots are fighting territorial battles in the darkness of soil. But this war is nothing compared to what happened 370 million years ago, when plants first learned to kill. We think of plants as peaceful, passive, background scenery to the real drama of claws and teeth. But that's a lie we tell ourselves because plants move too slowly for us to see their violence. In the deep past, during an epoch called the Devonian and Carboniferous periods, plants didn't just compete. They waged total war. They transformed the entire planet. They caused mass extinctions. They built weapons so effective that they nearly destroyed all life on Earth, including themselves. And the scars of that ancient conflict are still written into the DNA of every tree, every flower, every blade of grass alive today. This is the story of when plants became monsters. Let's rewind. 450 million years ago, the land is barren. It's a rocky wasteland, scoured by ultraviolet radiation, baked by an unfiltered sun. Life exists only in the oceans. The continents are dead zones, lifeless as Mars. Nothing green, nothing growing, just stone and dust. Then something changes. A few pioneering organisms, relatives of modern algae, begin to creep onto the shores. They're tiny, no taller than your fingernail, clinging to moist rocks near the water's edge. They have no roots, no leaves, no flowers, just simple stems with primitive spores. We call them bryophytes, the ancestors of mosses and liverworts. They don't look like much, but they're about to trigger a revolution. Here's what happens next. Those early plants start producing something the land has never seen before: soil. As they die and decay, their tissues mix with weathered rock. Fungi colonize their remains. Bacteria break down organic matter. Slowly, painfully slowly, a thin layer of dirt accumulates. And where there's soil, more plants can grow. Bigger plants. Stronger plants. By 400 million years ago, during the Devonian period, the invasion is in full swing. Plants have evolved vascular tissue, internal plumbing that lets them transport water and nutrients. This is a game changer. Suddenly, plants can grow tall, reaching upward toward the light. The race for the sun has begun, and this is where the war starts. The first trees appear. Not trees as we know them, but strange, alien things. Imagine Archaeopteris, one of the earliest. It grows 30 meters tall, its trunk as wide as a car. But it doesn't have leaves like modern trees. Instead, it's covered in fern-like fronds that spiral along its branches. It reproduces through spores, like a fern, but it has the structure of a tree. It's a hybrid, an evolutionary experiment, and it's absolutely ruthless. Archaeopteris doesn't just grow, it dominates. Its roots plunge deep into the earth, fracturing bedrock, accelerating weathering. One study estimated that early trees like Archaeopteris increased rock weathering rates by 10 times compared to the pre-tree world. 10 times. That's not just growth, that's geological warfare. But here's the catch. When rocks weather, they release minerals. Those minerals wash into the oceans. And in the oceans, they fertilize algae blooms, massive algae blooms. The algae die and sink to the ocean floor, where bacteria consume them, using up oxygen in the process. Oxygen levels in the oceans plummet, marine animals suffocate, entire ecosystems collapse. This is called the late Devonian extinction events, multiple pulses of death, stretching across 25 million years. 75% of all species vanish. And the cause? Trees. Trees learning to grow tall. The plants don't stop, they can't stop. Evolution has locked them into an arms race, and the only direction is up. Enter the Carboniferous period. 360 million years ago, the oxygen wars reach their peak. The world is covered in vast swamps, stretching across continents. And rising from those swamps are the most bizarre plants Earth has ever seen. Lepidodendron, the scale tree. It grows 40 meters tall, but its trunk is barely a meter wide at the base. It looks like a telephone pole covered in diamond-shaped scars, the remnants of leaves that have fallen away. The entire trunk is alive, photosynthesizing, a vertical factory pumping out energy. At the top, a crown of narrow leaves and cone-like structures that release clouds of spores. Next to it grows Sigillaria, another giant club moss, with vertical grooves running up its trunk like the columns of an ancient temple. And sprawling between them is calamites, a giant horsetail that can reach 20 meters, its segmented stems hollow and ridged. These aren't modern plants, they're experiments in gigantism, made possible by an atmosphere rich in oxygen and carbon dioxide. And they're growing so fast, so aggressively, that they're literally changing the planet's chemistry. Here's how the weapon works. Plants pull carbon dioxide from the air through photosynthesis. They use the carbon to build their bodies, trunks, roots, leaves. When they die in the oxygen-poor swamp water, they don't decay properly. Instead, they pile up, layer upon layer of dead plant matter, compressed over millions of years. We call it coal. The Carboniferous forests are carbon burial machines. They're removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere at rates never seen before or since. Carbon dioxide levels crash, and carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. As it disappears, the planet cools. Ice sheets spread from the poles. Sea levels drop. The climate becomes unstable, swinging between hothouse and icehouse conditions. This leads us to another extinction event. The mid-Carboniferous boundary, roughly 305 million years ago. Tropical rainforests collapse. Species adapted to warm, stable climates vanish. The plants have weaponized the atmosphere itself, but the plants aren't unified. They're at war with each other too. In the Carboniferous swamps, competition for light is brutal. Every plant is trying to overtop its neighbors. Lepidodendron grows fast, shooting upward in a race to the canopy. But it's unstable. Its roots are shallow, barely anchoring it. When it finally reaches full height, it produces spores in one massive reproductive burst, then dies. Its entire life strategy is speed over stability. Meanwhile, Chordates, an early relative of conifers, takes a different approach. It grows more slowly but builds stronger wood. Its roots dig deeper. It doesn't gamble everything on one reproductive event. It's playing the long game. And then there are the seed plants. This is the secret weapon that will eventually win the war. Instead of releasing millions of spores into the wind and hoping a few survive, seed plants package their embryos with food and protective coatings. Seeds can wait. They can disperse farther. They can survive conditions that would kill a spore. The first seed plants appear in the late Devonian, but they don't dominate immediately. For millions of years, they coexist with the spore-producing giants. But they're learning, evolving, diversifying. By the end of the Carboniferous, around 300 million years ago, the great coal swamps are dying. Climate change, caused by the plants themselves, is draining the swamps. The oxygen levels that allowed giant insects and sprawling club mosses begin to fall. And in the drier, more seasonal climates that follow, the seed plants have the advantage. Conifers spread, ginkgos appear, cycads diversify. These plants can survive months without water. Their seeds can lie dormant for years, waiting for rain. They don't need swamps. They can colonize highlands, deserts, floodplains. They're adaptable in ways the old giants never were. the club moss forests collapse. Lepidodendron and sigillaria retreat to marginal habitats, then disappear entirely from the fossil record. The world that created them no longer exists. They were too specialized, too dependent on the specific conditions of the Carboniferous swamps. But here's what's incredible. The descendants of those giants still exist. Modern club mosses are tiny, barely ankle-high. Horsetails grow in ditches and wetlands, rarely exceeding a meter. They're shadows of their ancestors, but their DNA remembers. Given the right conditions, the genetic instructions for gigantism are still there. Scientists have studied this. They've found that modern club mosses have retained many of the genes that allowed their ancestors to grow tall. The genes aren't deleted, they're just turned off. The plants shrunk not because they lost the ability to be giants, but because being giant became a death sentence in a world of lower oxygen and drier climates. This is the legacy of the plant wars. Every forest you walk through is built on the corpses of the losers. The coal we burn to power our cities is the compressed remains of carboniferous plants. They removed so much carbon from the atmosphere that they buried it underground for 300 million years. And now we're digging it up and releasing it back into the air, reversing in centuries what took millions of years to accomplish. The plants changed the world so drastically that they nearly destroyed it. And then they had to adapt to the world they created. It's a cycle of creation and destruction, growth and collapse, that defines the history of life on Earth. But here's the part that should keep you awake at night. The war never ended. It's still happening. Right now, in the Amazon rainforest, trees are competing for light with the same ruthlessness as their carboniferous ancestors. They're releasing chemicals into the soil to inhibit competitors. They're forming alliances with fungi, trading sugars for minerals. They're communicating through underground networks, warning each other of threats. We just can't see it because it happens on a timescale of years and decades, not seconds and minutes. To a plant, we're like mayflies, blinking in and out of existence too quickly to matter. But the plants remain. They've survived every mass extinction. They've outlasted the dinosaurs. They've adapted to ice ages and asteroid impacts and volcanic eruptions, and they're adapting to us right now. As we pump carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere, plants are responding. Some species are growing faster. Others are shifting their ranges toward the poles. The chemistry of forests is changing. The balance of species is shifting. The Carboniferous proved that plants can transform a planet. They did it once, and given enough time, they'll do it again. The question is whether we'll still be here to see it. Walk into a forest. Press your hand against the bark of a tree. Feel the roughness, the solidity. That tree is a war machine, refined by hundreds of millions of years of conflict. It's fighting for every photon of light, every drop of water, every molecule of nitrogen in the soil. It's silent, patient, and absolutely relentless. The prehistoric plants didn't rule through strength. They ruled through persistence. And in the end, that's the most terrifying weapon of all.